I guess the biggest target everyone's trying to get out of today is finding new contacts and have a better view of where they want to go in terms of finance.
So how about the others? Can I know your expectation? The reason why you come here? How about you?
I'm looking for about the finance knowledge in
Finance knowledge.
I'm looking for a job. I think this is my research. I research a lot of security, finance management, or some formula of finance finance model. But sometimes I confuse that how to choose the right way for my job. And I think that if I join here, I can know about best.
But my team and also the organizer, the organizing team.
What is finance? I would say it's the management of money. You know, it's quite like the definition. I think finance finance and business are two interdependent fields. It should, the less as possible, be disconnected from one to another.
Right? Is it right? When we think finance, okay, the first thing we will think about money, the amount of money. And the second meaning of finance is
We expect high salary.
I would expect that at the end of the month, what have I achieved in terms of my productivity, and as well as what are the knowledge that I have gained during the time that I'm working there.
okay. So how about you, Miss Han? Well-being and benefits, right? Non-cash benefits, right? And yeah, but cash is the most priority, right? And yes, when we organize a trip for our team, for a team building or for a group, our friends, for go to Vũng Tàu or Thailand or another way, we need to manage our budget, right? With that budget, how far we can go, and what should we use that budget, right? So finance is not far meaning to us. So how many people here? How many are you here have a finance background? How many? Education background. How many people have education background, finance background? Oh. How many people don't have? Okay. So my second question. So according to you, so who can work in a finance company?
I think working in a finance company is not just limited to people who have a finance background. It also encompasses people in math, science. So I feel like if you have the personalities, the tenacity, as well as the skills, I think it just doesn't limit to someone who has a finance background.
So your answer is finance career is should for people have finance education background. Yeah.
It's nice if you have a finance background, but if you don't, then it should be the one thing that stops you from doing finance. Because George Soros, one of the investors in Main Street, he started out being a philosophy major. So philosophy and finance, it doesn't seemingly relate to each other, but he did it anyway. So it just comes to show that you don't really need a finance background to be successful in it.
So how about the another? Do we need to have finance education background in order to work for a financial company? Do we need?
I think all people can join finance, and they can work together to have the other knowledge about finance and the other work.
There was a story. There's one guy. His education background is mechanical engineering. After graduating from university, he worked for 2 or 3 years, and then he applied to a bank from a background with management associate. By the time he got the promotion to the top, like CEO of a top bank, and that's bank named Citibank. And he is also our current CEO, Mr. Kalidasro. So his background is in mechanical engineering. The CEO. Before work for Epic Trading, he was CEO of Citibank Thailand, Citibank Global, then ANZ Vietnam, Prudential Finance Vietnam, and now is 7 years for Epic Trading. And the second guy is our deputy CEO or the Chief Risk Market Officer, Mr. Martins, who has a marketing background, not finance background. So how can they do it, right? And yes, in brief, finance background, finance knowledge, very important, but just a part. The most important supporting is the mindset and the knowledge about economy, the knowledge about physics. And now in modern finance, we have a new term. We combine the economy and physics. Is the term with econo-physics, replaced for modern finance. The reason why, because with the background, with the knowledge of physics, we can explain the reason, we can explain the phenomena, the reason for the thing happen. So, and physics like happen everywhere in our life. Okay. So, our answer for my question, who can work for a finance company, for a finance banking industry? Yet everyone can apply. And the reason why we should work for a finance, the first thing, the demand always higher than the supply. And the second thing, the income in finance industry quite big, quite attractive. And the third is the speed, the use, and the adaptation. Because in order to work for a finance company or when you join a finance company, everything require you to make a quick decision. And you have to very decisive, very determined, determine with your decision, commitment with your decision, and consistent in your thought, in your thinking, in your opinion. And in working in finance company, the GA is not an important thing. So, and working for finance company will help you have the very dynamic environment, professional environment. And the third, the number 5 is E. You can foresee, you can forecast can predict the future. Because in order to work for a finance company, if you don't have the skill of predict the thing, do the analysis, we will take risk and we cannot manage our risk. So that is the 5 reasons for should working for finance company. Okay, and for epic credit, I feel very easy for you to find and to understand us in our website. And here we just say very brief. Epic Credit is a young company, just 7 years old. But after 7 years now, we have over 17,000 employees. And the reason why we can develop fast and success like that, yes, the core competency is we non-stop learning.
Thanks a lot, Ms. Arden. That was really interesting. So there's obviously lots of opportunity to work at FE. Anyone from any background can apply. That's great. So next up, we've got Mark Janji, who's going to really share his wealth of experience with us. He's worked in a whole bunch of institutional sales roles in Vietnam. He's a CFA holder. He's a guy that can really tell you about what it's like in the trenches on being in a finance company. So I'll hand you over to Mark. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Shane, and thank you, Mrs. Trinan. That was very interesting and I think very relevant. 17,000 people. Wow. So that keeps you and your department very busy.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. My name is Mark Janji. I'll tell you a little bit about myself and tell you some things that I can share about finance. Actually, before we start, one small caveat. As Ms. Tunan mentioned, finance is actually very, very big. When I had first talked about this with Shane about doing this talk today, I said finance, let's talk about finance, but actually it's too wide, right? Financial management, CFOs, et cetera, and it's much beyond the scope of my experience. What I can tell you about is related to capital markets and investments. So specifically equity research, institutional sales, the buy side, fund management, analysts, etc. Okay? But we're going to be focusing more on, I believe, where it relates to sell side, which means working for a stockbroker, because that's where I spent a lot of my time. Okay. So coming back. So my name is Mark Janji, Canadian. I've spent the past 15 years in Vietnam. Most of my time in Vietnam has been working on the sell side. I was the first head of research in Vietnam at a time where there were 14 or 16 listed companies. And I've worked for various brokerage houses. I've seen this market go from 12 listed companies to where we are now, over 1,000 companies. And where liquidity on a daily basis was, if we were lucky, close to $10 million, and now, we're talking about 30 times that. Okay, so I'm now head of institutional sales. I've moved away from the research role, but we're going to be covering that a little bit later. And I'm now really just doing pure brokerage. I'm selling stock ideas to institutional investors who want to invest in Vietnam. And I work for a company called Viet Dragon Securities. And this is not to confuse with Dragon Capital. There's a lot of dragons in Vietnam. People love dragons. And I'm always saying, we're not Dragon Capital. We're not related to Dragon Capital. They may be our clients, but we are a broker. They're a fund manager. Okay? We are the company was set up in 2006. We've got a few less people than you do. We're 300 people. But we're in 4 locations across the country. I would say that as a reflection of the way that Vietnam's capital markets trade, I'd say 2/3 of our staff are retail brokers. Okay? So if you look at the Vietnamese stock market, probably 80% of your daily trading comes from domestic investors. And out of that domestic investors group, I'd say 80% is retail. Okay? Because there isn't in Vietnam just yet a big institutional investor base. Okay? You've got guys, and I'm not counting Dragon Capital, because Dragon Capital is considered as a foreign investor, or PXP, or Vina Capital. These are big names that you might have heard of, right? But they're considered foreign. The guys that we're talking about in terms of institutional client base would be guys like maybe SCIC, but they have a small portion of that focuses on trading. You've got guys like at Eastbridge or Manulife, that they have an asset management division, but because they're insurance companies, most of their investments goes into bonds and not equities. Okay? So a lot of it is retail. And so as a firm, we need a lot of retail brokers, that horde of retail brokers going out and talking with mom and pops or their friends, or trying to convince somebody, family, to invest in the stock market. So we've got that. Now, besides that, we have probably a team of, in total, let's say around 25 people that are focused on institutional investors. Okay? And that includes the research department, who are analyzing stocks, looking at the economy, different sectors, writing buy, sell, and hold recommendations to publish and advise clients. And you have my team of sales traders who are taking this and talking to clients, right? And we have a team of investment bankers. Okay? The investment bankers, they're out there looking for M&A transactions or listings, etc. New supply of stocks that we could go out on the research cover, and on the sales side, like my team, go out and pitch to our clients. So before we start, I want to say that across the board, out of all of those different roles and activities within our firm, we are looking for people. We're always looking for talent. And I've got, raise your hand, T. Okay, T is in the back. Okay, she is in our HR department, and she's always open to, if you you guys are interested to learn more about the opportunities, either investment banking, sales, research, etc., please, or retail brokerage, please, I invite you to go and speak with her. All right. So now we're going to be talking about, let's say, those roles, right? The roles in not finance, but really capital markets, institutional sales, research, etc. Now, as Trinan said, I think she's really, and you mentioned as well, you're working in finance or investments or brokerage. The finance part of it is a small part. So if you have it, it's great. If you don't have it, there are other courses. The guys, going out and taking your CFA is one way of filling up that hole that's missing if you didn't study finance, for example. Right? But at the end of the day, what you really need is passion, and you need curiosity, right? So when I was managing a team of equity research analysts, I'd be telling my analysts, you have to be reading equity research. You have to be reading things that are like from outside of Vietnam. As guys you already have a heads up on most people who are coming to Vietnam and or who are here and are looking to enter into the workforce, is that you have for the most part, have studied outside of the country, which has given you something that and it's, what is it? It's this special way of seeing things, right? It's magical, right? It's allowing you to be able to, expand your field of view when you're looking at things, right? And so, you can imagine, I don't know, 12 years ago or 13 years ago, and I was training analysts and guys who had studied in Vietnam, basically the capital market was very young, and there weren't equity research analysts. So how do we get them to think and question, right? To be curious, right? And that's the idea, because you're going to be going, if you're working in research, you'd be going out and you'd be meeting with management and talking to management about their business to try to come back and build your equity research report, your model, right, etc. Right? And management is only going to give you one part of the equation. You have to go out and find other sources of information. Or let's say if you're covering things like the aviation industry, well, you're not going to necessarily want to just talk to guys at IAJN and Vietnam Airlines, but you also want to understand what's going on in terms of the airport management, what kind of what's going on with tourism in general, etc. And so you have to expand your field of vision when you're studying a specific company or sector. And that requires something where you have to be very curious and passionate and ask yourself questions that maybe somebody will take something at the first level and will not go beyond that. If you go to a management, you're meeting with management of a company, and they'll tell you this is what we expect to happen, well, you need to also be able to say in a nice way, because of course, this is Vietnam and there is certain hierarchy, etc. Well, you still have to say, well, you know what, if you want to grow by 50% next year and you're not expanding your marketing budget, well, how are you going to be doing that? In a nice way. Basically telling the guy that he's lying in your face, but he has to be able to explain those things, right? Otherwise, it won't happen, right? So those are that's when your things that are important, to be curious. Now we'll come back. And that's also why I think that it's nice and it's good to be able to come out or come into a role in finance or investment from a background that is a little bit different, because it does give you a different point of view on certain things. Okay? Now, what you'll realize very quickly is that if you're, and I'm not discounting how important it is to know how to work Excel and build a model. Okay, it is an important part of the job. Okay, but actually, if you were to cut the day of a research analyst, you'd find that probably the part that is really modeling is 15% of his day that he spends on that. The rest is spent on developing his assumptions. And developing his assumptions requires the understanding about business. And understanding the business requires all that research part of it. Okay? And let's say that part, okay, of building your thesis and then understanding business, etc., and then building your model, etc., and coming up with your buy-sell recommendation and having that will be. I'm looking at it. I'm trying to visualize, a pie chart of the time of an analyst, and I'd say that would be probably 30%. 30% of the time. The rest of the time is spent talking to the buy side or identifying new sources of information to be able to come out with new ideas. Okay? So then you're convincing him. So then what does that require? You see? So we're talking about finance, but we're actually talking about other things that are part of the role of sell side. And that requires your interpersonal skills. That requires your ability to network, right? And that ends up being, and your ability to brand yourself, right? And that ends up being, probably a good 30 or 40% of the time that you're going to be spending, which is going to be getting people to know you as the analyst or as the broker or as the thought leader in the field that we're talking about, sell side. Okay, brokerage. So then you realize that okay, you've got to know how to work your Excel. You've got to know how to do your PowerPoint presentations, right? And you're coming out of university, maybe, or maybe some of you have some experience, but you come out of university and you're thinking, okay, well now I've learned how to do a DCF in university, and I did that, and I know how to make that model, etc. Well now, you know what it's time to do? It's time to go and learn something else that is not related to finance. It's time to go and learn about, think about how to time management, perhaps. Learn about time management. That will be a good tool for you to be able to eventually manage your time and focus on those things and then find other things. And then I'd say, maybe you did writing at university, right? You write at university and all these theses, etc. Okay, but you're going to have to forget all of that. Okay, because when you're an equity research analyst on the sell side, nobody has time to read an introduction and then the development and then the conclusion. Nobody reads that. There's not one fund manager that goes through like that, and equity research isn't written this way. It's written completely in reverse. It's taking that conclusion and it's putting it as the first part. And then you're explaining why you think that, but the first thing that you're going to be saying is, this is my conclusion, this is my thesis. Okay? So you're going to have to forget all of this, and so often it's like, I'm talking about it, and I remember how it was, how I'd be fighting with analysts about this. They'd be like, especially first year analysts, they'd come out and they'd be writing this stuff for me, and come out with their first report, or in the first year we'd have to rewrite the whole thing. Because why? Because at university we're thinking in this way, and this is how you get your top grades, and you go with your introduction, and then you have your conclusion, and everybody's happy. But that's not how it works in investments. They'll want to see your conclusion first, and then you explain a little bit, and then everybody's happy. So you'll have to rethink about that part, right? I think that either if you're working on in equity research, or if you're working in investment banking, okay, besides networking, master PowerPoint. You're going to be doing so many PowerPoint presentations for everything. Master it, right? Know how to, get this and prepare, try it out, get some before you start. Before you come into work, you should and before you interview, you should already feel very confident about that. Now you feel confident about your DCFs and your that part, etc. But get to really understand PowerPoint presentations and how to make them, and how to build them, and make them really stunning. Okay? Because you're going to be doing a lot of them. Okay? And then, again, I mentioned this earlier, but it's important, is to build your brand. Okay? How do you build your brand? What is it? This idea of being a thought leader, okay? As an analyst, or as a broker, or it could work in investment banking, but the idea is that you want people to know you. You want to be famous somewhere. And if you're an analyst, if you're working on the sell side as a research analyst, you want to be famous. You have to be ready to be famous. And you want people to recognize you as being the guy or girl to go to for steel industry, for example, or for airlines, or for everything. And so the question is, like, how do you do that, right? How do you do those things? Right? Well, you've got to do a lot of research. You've got to prepare. You've got to find good sources of information, not like just journals, industry journals, and things like this, and you should be reading them, but you should also identify people in the industry who you could contact in Vietnam, outside of Vietnam. Use LinkedIn, okay, a lot. Okay, LinkedIn is great because you don't have to So you're writing something, right? You're writing in English, or if you want to write in Vietnamese, that's fine. Okay, but you're writing and you've got an idea. Pitch that idea onto LinkedIn, right? Because you can write stuff on LinkedIn. You can have there's sort of that article writing on LinkedIn, right? And that's part of the way that you are going to be building your brand. Okay? Instead of writing, building a blog and almost end up, you know what I mean? Instead of having a blog, putting a blog and all this, just use LinkedIn. It's already there. Yeah, so that's sort of like on the research side. I think that those are things that need to be looked at. Now, when you're going to be interviewing, okay, you're going to be so I need a lot of people. I need a lot of candidates that come and see me, etc. How do I choose the candidates, right? So I can tell you that it's not, well, there's part of it that is the school and their grades, etc. Okay? But that's a small part of it, actually. A lot of it is about the attitude, the passion, the general knowledge. Okay? If some guy tells me or a girl tells me, oh, I want to work in finance, or I want to work in investments, I want to work for you, I want to work in stock brokerage, etc. Okay, yeah. So tell me, which is your favorite stock? I don't know. Well, then you don't have a job. You don't want to do that. You have no passion for it. So you don't come to the employer and say this is what I want to do, and they're not ready. And that's how. And it's not your CV or whatever, or your grades at university that is going to make the difference, because there's a lot of very intelligent people, right? Because actually finance is, and as Ms. Gianani was saying, there's a lot of demand for finance. There's a lot of very good people, very intelligent people that go to finance, right? I think, and so you have a lot of top talent. And then the question is, how do you differentiate yourself? And it's not going to be like try to ace an interview by saying, yeah, it's going to be by showing, right? So if I say, you tell me that you like the stock market, or you want to work in finance, etc. Well, you better have 3 picks, your top picks, and why those stocks are your favorite stocks, right? Because part of the whole job on the sell side is going to be all the time, either in your stock broker like me, or if you're on the research side, you're still going to be pitching ideas to clients, right? So you have to be ready to do that in the interview. And so so sometimes, I have guys who come to me and they're not ready. They didn't do their homework. They didn't prepare that part. So what I'll do is I'll tell them, okay, well now go back after this interview, and I make them prepare like a pitch, and then I'll come back and they'll come back and they'll talk. And we do a pitch. Choose a stock, right? Whichever stock. It could be in Vietnam. It could be outside of Vietnam. I prefer Vietnam because then it gives us some ideas to talk. If I like the candidate and we hire him, well, we already have something to talk about to clients. Okay? But it's really just to see how the candidate can pitch an idea, convince, and analyze, right? Because you're going to be reasoning. Part of my job is I take research from my research department, but I can also take research from, other brokers' research departments. It doesn't matter, right? I just need to make my idea, my opinion. You need to have an opinion if you're working with this. And people are coming to you for those opinions. when you're working with the buy side, okay, the investor wants you to have conviction. Okay, so you've got a lot of, for example, right? I'll give you an example. You could have a research department could cover 50 stocks. Our research department covers 50 stocks, right? And some of these stocks can have like a 70% upside. I've got a stock right now that has 70% upside. Buy recommendation, 70% upside. Okay? But it's not really the one that I recommend clients to go into because I'm not super convinced. I don't have a high conviction on that stock. So it's not about your valuation, or the valuation of the analyst, or if you're an analyst, then your valuation. But it's about having conviction and say, this one, for me, is more probable of reaching this target because of XXX, and I won't recommend this one, but I'll recommend you this one is the one I like. And if you do that to the buy side, when you're talking to clients, they'll love you for that. Because that's what they want to hear. They don't want to hear like, well, I've got this one at 70%, I've got this one at 65%, this one, nah. They're all buy recommendations. This guy, the buy side, they've got limited amount of money. They have to make a few calls. Let's say you've got 50 stocks, right? On the sell side, you cover 50 stocks, but they can only invest in 10. So to create alpha, beating the market, for them to beat the market, they're only going to be doing it with a few calls, with a few stock picks. And for them to do that, they need high conviction from the analyst. They're not necessarily going to be looking at your evaluation. They're not necessarily going to be looking. They want to have you to be responsive, okay? But they'll make their own idea at the end of the day. But it's good to have that high conviction versus just showing them your portfolio of all the stock recommendations that you have. Are we good?
Yeah.
Where are we? I mean, I could continue. I don't mind.
Yeah,
Are we good?
Well, yeah,
Okay, some
we want to
questions.
give time for some some questions.
Yeah.
So we might open it up for some questions, both from Mark and from Miss Art as well.
Yeah.
So if you guys have any questions, we might just have a couple of questions. I think Mark and Miss Art will be able to hang around for the networking as well. And we've got all this delicious food still to eat, so we've got to do that as well. So does anyone have a question for Mark or Miss Art? I don't think you need a microphone, it's small enough.
Hi, I think that you have a lot of experience overseas, but when you come to Vietnam, does it really adapt with the life environment and financial situation in Vietnam and refinance industry?
It's a good question. Actually, I have more experience in my career in Vietnam than outside of Vietnam. Okay. So there's a cultural aspect, I think. There's part of it that's cultural, and you have to understand that at the very beginning. I think I found it much more challenging. Now, I don't know. I feel that it's part of it is the norm. But things like it's a true story. When I said earlier, you go see management, and management tells you it's going to, sales are going to grow 50%, but that's the end of the conversation. There's no and so how do you deal with that? And how do you when you've got the analyst, and the analyst tells you, and he's translating, because at the time I couldn't speak Vietnamese, and he's translating, and he's saying the CEO tells us that the sales are going to grow by 50% and earnings are going to grow up by 25%, and then that's it, and what am I supposed to do with that? Well, then you have to ask, and you say to the analyst, no, okay, so now tell the guy, okay, can you explain how you're going to get there, because I don't see anything else on your income statement, where you've not done any investments, or or the whole market is, your products, nobody wants them, So how do you do that? And then so it's a question of how do you manage that? A little bit of, there's a cultural sensitivity in it that's important. I hope I've gotten some more as I've spent time here. I'm not sure.
One financial once told me that the most important thing in finance is reputation, your company reputation. So how do you protect your reputation when your reputation don't go all when the market go down like 2 years ago? The Vietnamese market go down
Yeah.
80 points.
Yeah.
So how?
Well, so absolutely, right? And you're in the stock market. I want to just say, okay, that we are, 18 years into the stock market. The market is 18 years old, okay? So it's still super young and there's great opportunities, okay? The market where it's going to be 10 years from now is very different than it is today, and it's just going to continue to grow, okay? There is going to be in between ups and downs. We're in the frontier market, it's normal, okay? Now, to answer your question, so on the buy side, you have to know what you're doing when you're making those investments, okay? And you're looking at you have to be convinced about what you're doing when you're making investments, okay? So that even if you make the wrong call, then you can still defend yourself. When you're on the sell side, I think what clients on the buy side want when you see a crash like this is that you don't disappear. Nobody knows. It happened, right? The market has, over the past 3 weeks, man, has been very tough, and we don't know how it's going to be over the next little while because yields in the U.S. are increasing. There's a trade war with China, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? There are things that can mean that there's still more headwind in the future. But what you don't want to do is disappear. You still want to be advising clients, okay? And that's how you build that reputation.
For career finance, I know it's important to have a CFA, but I've also talked with some industry professionals who also hold a CPA, and they're also investment bankers. So I know that may give you insights into like the pros and cons of each one.
There's no pros and no cons, right? I think that both are important. There's, when I was head of research, so sales is different, right? And I just want to say, like, I'm a broker, you don't need a CFA, right? It's good, it's just not bad, it's not bad. But when you're in research, okay, and when I was head of research, I'd be hiring all CPAs first. Before I'd hire, that would be the first thing. And then you've got guys who are both, right? They'll have studied, they'll have worked for one of the big fours, a couple of terms, like a couple of seasons, audit seasons and things like this. And then I hire them. They're dead after 2 audit seasons. That's what happens in the big four. It's like either you make it past your second season and you go in for the third, and then that's your career and you're going to become an auditor or whatever, or you just after 2 seasons you're out. So those long days, and it just kills you. You want to go something else, and then they go into equity research, and they're great candidates because they have the whole auditing part, etc. And then adding the finance part, I think is relatively easy.
Do you have a view on the regulation of the country as to how it's opening up to people coming from outside of Vietnam and starting to work or establishing companies here? And how is it affecting your view on the stock market?
There's a lot of questions in there. Okay. My view on the country opening up to foreigners working here I think it's there and it's opening up and there's more and more. I've just hired 2 foreigners in my firm, 2 Canadian. Nothing to do with the fact that I'm Canadian, but I don't know. But we've hired just 2 and so it's possible. In terms of foreign companies coming in, I'm not like very knowledgeable about like the regulation about this specifically, but you know, just there's WTO arrangements and they have to do certain things, etc. And so it's there and it's moving forward. In terms of the capital markets, what I really find interesting, okay, is actually that over the past 9 months, the capital markets, stock market in Vietnam right now, whereas in the past a lot of the IPOs were, you know, state-owned companies that were equitizing, etc., and then they would list. What we've seen over the past 9 months is like purely private sector companies coming on and listing their shares on the stock market. And I'd go even further, is that what we're seeing, and it's going to happen like over the next few months, I'd say, in the next 6 months probably, we are aware of a few FDI companies who've been doing business in Vietnam who are transforming their business so that they can list an IPO in Vietnam. And that I think is really interesting, you see, because it opens up like the type of companies that you can find on the stock market.
Because we might just stop there as far as...
I'm going to be here.
Yeah. So Mark will stick around for a while and everyone can see. But yeah, first of all, thanks Mark. Thanks for saying. You know, it's something that both